We've all been there as dungeon masters.
You spent hours planning a session, carefully creating NPCs, practicing voices, crafting exquisite puzzles and dungeons, and then your players arrive and promptly decide they want to spend 2 hours talking to Boblin the Goblin in the local tavern.
Boblin? He sounds cool. I want to talk to him.
No, Ian. No. Go over there.
There's no escaping it. When you're DMing, at some point, something inevitably goes wrong.
Luckily, this has been happening to DMs in Dungeons & Dragons since the 1970s. So there's almost half a century, yes I checked, of wisdom to take advantage of when it comes to handling those panic-inducing moments.
From how to handle difficult players to what to do when your group completely ignores the plot, there's a bunch of advice here, whether you're a newcomer to the art of being a dungeon master or whether you've been doing it since the Red Box came out.
We travelled to Lucca Comics and Games Festival and spoke to professional dungeon masters and players to ask them what on earth you do when you're DMing a session and something goes horribly wrong. Here's 8 things you can do to claw back control of the session.
If you are a dungeon master, it will go wrong. That is perfectly okay. It's very easy to think that, the DM knows everything and the DM's got everything planned. Little behind the curtains, looking at the wizard, it goes wrong all the time. There are times when my players have completely gone off the rails. I've been playing for a really long time, so I know my players really well. I can start to kind of predict what they're going to do, but sometimes they'll just throw you that curveball. You know, you might think that they're going to go off to the Tower of Bones to fight the Necromancer because that's what they've been talking about for 3 weeks, and then they turn up and they're like, no, we're going to go explore this city and we're going to go off and do a shopping episode or whatever it is. And it's just about embracing that. It's about saying, okay, and players will never know. They don't know what you have behind the screen. They don't know what you've prepared. And it's about being able to just be like, okay, sure, you go and do that. You might be panicking in your mind, but it's take what you've prepared and reskin it. Maybe instead of going to the Tower of the Bone, they arrive at the city to find that a necromancer is attacking it or something. You can take all those encounters, move them into a different place, you change the names of things, you change the way it looks, you change the way that it sounds, and it's still the same notes you've prepared, but the players would never know. They think that you've had that planned the whole time.
I pretend they're doing what I wanted them to do all the time. So let's say, for example, you've plotted out a very simple dungeon, which involves you want the players to go into the first room, and there's 2 doors. The door to the right, which goes to the quest goal, and the door to the left, which doesn't. And they go, to the left! And I'm going, cool, the quest goal's here. I just change the map around what they do.
Like, when it comes down to it, you just need, maybe an armor class and some hit points and a little trick, kind of thing. So I usually just have sort of side notes. And if they kind of go off on a tangent, I at least have something I can riff on to make it sort of interesting. And then you may be able to loop them back. But the way I run games is, it's like, okay, I start you out on a path, and if they go way off this way, I just write the story that way. And I do it that way because that gives me the feeling that the players are actually driving the game. So what they are interested in, they pursue.
Embrace the things that you have inherently. If you watch a lot of movies, play a lot of video games, read a lot of books, it's okay to just draw inspiration from that. Maybe you've just played like a really fun quest in the game, and you can just be like, okay, well, I remember that really well, I'll throw in some goblins and make it a bit different. But you can use that kind of stuff to make it feel seamless.
If you think of it like a flow diagram, so if the starting point is here, and there's like 3 or 5 logical places to go, sure, each one is a little fun thing we can do, but they'll converge again at there's a bottleneck of plot, and then we'll go off again into possibilities. They'll do one of them and then bottleneck in plot.
And I use a thing too that I call the gutter, like in bowling, right? So all I have to do is get them through this game, and they've decided to go off on a tangent. And I'm like, okay, I just have to entertain you for another hour or so, and then I have a whole week where I can figure out the next session.
But also what I can do is, all right, if they decide to go off and kill a dragon instead of the demon I've written up, I can just use the same stats and restat it. So instead of the demon having a sort of necrotic energy attack, I'll be like, oh, it's fire damage now and it's breathing fire on you, but it's the same stat because no one looks behind the screen.
I did have this time when I was DMing, and we did this thing. I think I orchestrated a ball or gala with vampires, and they were not high enough level to battle these vampires. But I think a couple of times I mentioned like, oh, you know, it's daytime. Oh, and there's these long curtains. Oh, and the curtains, and they weren't picking up on that. And somebody did a fire spell. And then I just made up like, the fire sort of caught onto the curtain. One curtain is on fire. You see some vampires evaporating, and then they got it.
Yeah, we need some serious DM intervention there, because we were not putting the pieces together at all. It's like, can we talk to the vampires? Can we charm them? Can we, like, no, it's not.
You were all panicked, like, we're dying. Like, oh, it's so easy. Come on, do it. Come on, do it.
It was a feel-bad moment.
That can be, especially if you're running games in like an organized play setting like we talked about earlier, you're more likely to run into like people you don't know. I had something that happened a couple years ago at a show in Indiana that I was at, where I'm not going to go into all the details because it would not make a lick of sense, but one of the characters wanted to charm an NPC and then was going to take advantage of them. I wasn't particularly comfortable with that, and I could see immediately that no one else at the table was either. So, called time out. I was like, all right, cool. So here's where we are. Here's what I'm seeing. Like, here's where this seems to be going, and this is the hard line that I'm gonna draw. And so I'd like it if you kind of reconsidered where you're headed. And if the gentleman wouldn't have, I would have asked him politely to leave, because there's, you know, once you draw that line, I want everybody at the table to feel comfortable and safe. So I find being reasonable and talking through things, like making sure here's why I'm saying what I'm saying. And if people don't want to listen to that, then not being argumentative, but just, I'm gonna have to ask you to go. Thank you and have a nice day.
Yeah, I have unruly players sometimes. I had a player that did a fantasy football draft on his phone while I was running a game. So I just stared at him. You just stop. It's like, I'm not gonna keep doing this until you put that thing down.
Well, I think it's a tricky one, right? Because, the role of the DM isn't necessarily to tell the players what to do. The role of the DM is to ensure everybody at the table is having fun and to help them build a story. If you have a player who is stopping everyone from having fun, then you get into the thing of Dungeons & Dragons is a social game. It is a game like sitting down to play a board game with your family, or it's sitting down at a dinner party. That means there are social rules, and sometimes in those kind of circumstances you need to take that player aside and say, hey, listen, pal, what you're doing is making it not fun for everybody else. What can we do to make it fun for you and to make sure that everyone else is having fun as well? And it's making people aware that it is a team thing. It's not, I've got my character and I'm going to tell my story. It's, we're telling our stories together. And sometimes you just got to have that hard conversation. And I totally, as a nerd and an introvert, it's the worst thing in the world, but often it is absolutely fine. And you sit down and sometimes people just don't realize. And then sometimes it's a case of maybe this game isn't right for that person. Maybe it's saying, well, listen, I think that we're playing a very different game to what you want to play. Maybe you should run a game and play it the way you want to play, and then everyone can play that kind of game. And that's okay too. Different DMs and players have different styles, and they have different ways that they want to enjoy the game. That's okay.
I think you need to understand what your players want out of the experience. I think there's some players that want total immersion, and they want to write a 20-page character backstory, which is great. If that's what they want to fully immerse into this character, then I'll go along on that trip with them too. There's other players that love magical items and chasing down magical items. That carrot at the end of the stick in front of the burro, in front of the donkey, I think can be really effective. You can also use that to catch them too, which I've done before. A lot of times players will split the party if they sniff treasure, and that's a great way to just murder them. which I think is another really fun thing that I enjoy about being a DM is I do want to kill my players, and I get upset when I don't. And I think that adds to the fun. I mean, look, you know, don't get me wrong, we're telling a great story here, but yeah, I want to kill him. What are you killing? What do you think I pulled that dragon out for? I want to kill everybody.
Don't panic, and remember you're with friends, and just try to make it fun and keep it rolling, and then you'll eventually be like, I don't know what you guys are doing, but we'll find out. And they're like, what's going to happen next week? It's like, oh, you'll be surprised. Don't know, but you have time to figure it out.
So there you go, 8 pointers to help you out when you're DMing a session and something inevitably goes wrong.
Hit like if you found these tips useful, and don't forget to subscribe to Eurogamer for plenty more Dungeons and Dragons videos, and of course loads of videos about video games.
We release a new video every single day, so there is always something to watch. We'll see you next time, and may the dice be ever in your favour.